This tale is titled, "Daughter Excluded Me from Her Wedding I Funded, so I Canceled Everything Without Her Knowing and Watched Her Struggle." Before we get into today's video, I need your help. The channel has been losing momentum, and subscribing is one of the easiest ways you can support us. It's free, quick, and helps us continue producing amazing content. Your support truly means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you so much. Now, let's dive into the video. Hey everyone, this is likely going to be a lengthy one. I'm a 57-year-old man and never thought I'd be sharing something like this. But I really need to get it off my chest since it's been bothering me for weeks. Honestly, I'm not sure where else to turn. This is about my daughter, Kay, a 27-year-old woman, and how she really hurt me, which led me to do something pretty drastic that I still feel conflicted about. A little background since it's important. Kay is my only child from my first marriage. Her mother left when Kay was 7 and ran off to Europe with some guy named Tom. I raised Kay alone for 5 years before meeting my current wife, Jenna, 45 years old. Those 5 years were tough, being a single father trying to balance running a business and caring for a child who was deeply affected by her mother's abandonment. Anyway, about 2 months ago, Kay told me she was getting married to a man named Ben. Now, Kay and I have had many issues over the years. Seriously. You wouldn't believe the things I've had to endure. But when she told me about her wedding, I was genuinely happy for her. Finally, something positive in her life. She seemed really invested in this Ben guy, and I thought maybe she was finally on the right track. The problem was, Kay and Ben were pretty much broke. She only got a decent job last year, and before that, they had been depending on my financial support. They could only afford a courthouse wedding, so like any father would, I offered to cover all the expenses as a gift. The venue, catering, flowers, music, the entire shebang. I'm talking about a $50,000 wedding here. I'm not boasting, but I run an export business that has been in my family for generations, so I could manage it. I remember when we sat down to discuss the wedding plans, Kay actually seemed happy, like genuinely excited. It was the first time in years that I saw her so full of joy. She showed me Pinterest boards and Instagram posts of wedding ideas she liked. For a brief moment, it felt like maybe we were finally going to have the father-daughter relationship I always dreamed of. The wedding planner she chose was a professional who had handled several high-end weddings in our area. Kay attended all the meetings with him, picking out decorations and such. I just made the payments and let her handle the details. It was her day after all, and I was busy with work. Plus, I don't know much about wedding planning. One night, after she sent me pictures of the venue she chose, a beautiful spot by a lake, I texted her telling her I was proud of her and couldn't wait to walk her down the aisle. She responded with just a thumbs-up emoji. Looking back, I should have realized something was off then, but I was too caught up in the excitement of it all. For about a month and a half, everything seemed fine. Kay was taking care of the wedding arrangements, and I was paying the bills, which kept adding up. Who needs a chocolate fountain and an ice sculpture? Still, I thought everything was going smoothly. I even started working with my tailor to have a suit made, and Jenna was helping me choose colors. She's always been very supportive of Kay, even though Kay has been nothing but rude to her over the years. Then, small things started feeling strange. Jenna's cousin bumped into one of Kay's friends at a cafe and mentioned how excited we were for the wedding. Apparently, Kay's friend was surprised and said she thought Kay wasn't inviting them. She claimed Kay had to cut out toxic family members for her mental well-being. Jenna's cousin asked what she meant, and the friend awkwardly mumbled something about a difficult childhood before changing the topic. At the time, I dismissed it, thinking it was a misunderstanding. But now, I wish I'd paid more attention. The situation unraveled when my brother Joe called asking about the wedding date because he needed to book flights. I thought I could just call the wedding planner to add him to the guest list, but when I did, the planner acted strangely. He told me the guest list was already full and that he'd need to check with Kay for any changes. I couldn't believe it. I'm paying for everything, and he's acting like he needs Kay's permission to add one more person? I insisted he send me the guest list so I could see what was going on. He hesitated and said he wasn't authorized to share that information. That's when I lost it. I probably could have handled it better. But I told him, "I'm the one paying you, so send me the list, or I'll call your boss." He finally caved and emailed me the list, but my name wasn't on it. Neither was Jenna's. But the real blow came when I saw who was listed as the father of the bride. Tom, the same man who helped my ex-wife abandon our daughter. The man who told her he wasn't ready to be a father and walked out. The man who literally said, "Kay's your problem now," before they left for Europe. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about not inviting me. It was about replacing me, erasing me completely. And the worst part? Kay had been spreading lies to justify it. I called my sister, my parents, and even extended family. Everyone had heard some version of the same story. How I was emotionally abusive. How I never supported Kay. How I was controlling and manipulative. She'd been laying the groundwork for months, probably telling Ben's family the same things to justify why she cut me out. I must have stared at that email for what felt like an hour, thinking maybe I was misinterpreting it. But no. The wedding planner forwarded Kay's original emails. She had specifically told them not to let me or Jenna into the venue and included detailed security protocols. Here I was, $50,000 deep into my daughter's wedding, and I wasn't even allowed to be there. Not only that, but she wanted Tom to walk her down the aisle instead of me, the man who hadn't even sent her a birthday card in 20 years. I'm not going to pretend I took it well. I went on a drinking binge for about a week, taking shots for breakfast kind of thing. Jenna was really concerned, kept trying to get me to eat, but I just couldn't. I sat in my office, staring at that email and drinking myself into oblivion. I called Kay probably 50 times, all going straight to voicemail. I left several messages, starting calmly, but getting progressively angrier and more emotional. Looking back, it was embarrassing. But what do you say when your kid does something like this? The worst part was watching Jenna try to cope. She had been in Kay's life for 14 years, helping me get her through high school, college, 2 rehab stints. She'd always defended Kay when others criticized her behavior. And this is how Kay repaid her? Meanwhile, the wedding planner kept sending me bills for flowers, catering, and deposits. Each one felt like a slap in the face. Kay was still planning her perfect wedding with my money, and I wasn't even allowed to attend. I later found out she was at her bachelorette party that week, partying with friends and having a great time, while I was at home breaking down, wondering where I went wrong as a father. Yeah, I know I probably sound pathetic, a 57-year-old man crying over his daughter's cruelty, but nothing prepares you for that kind of betrayal. I've been screwed over by business partners, gone through a tough divorce, and dealt with all kinds of challenges. But this hurt differently. I kept thinking about all the times I imagined walking her down the aisle. How I stayed in her life despite all the drama, the fights, the police, and hospital calls at midnight. How I never gave up on her, even when everyone told me to. And now, she was choosing Tom. After a week of feeling miserable and leaving the most embarrassing voicemails ever, I finally sobered up enough to realize I needed to confront Kay in person. Jenna tried to talk me out of it, told me I should wait until I calmed down, but I couldn't just sit there anymore. So, I drove to Kay's apartment, which, surprise, I helped them afford until she got a job last year. The entire drive over, I kept rehearsing what I was going to say, trying to stay calm, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely steer. I arrived at her place around 6 p.m. and rang the bell 5 times before she finally answered. "Dad, I'm really busy with wedding prep right now," she said, and wouldn't even buzz me in like I was a solicitor. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I lost it. I started buzzing all the other apartments until someone let me in. I took the elevator up to her floor and heard her arguing with Ben through the door. When Ben opened it, he looked uncomfortable. Kay was standing in their living room, surrounded by wedding magazines and sample centerpieces, looking at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. "What do you want?" she asked. I tried to stay composed. I calmly asked her why she didn't tell me Tom would walk her down the aisle. Her response? She smirked and said, "At least he never replaced Mom." I was stunned. Tom, the guy who abandoned her, hasn't spoken to her in 20 years, and I'm the bad guy for remarrying after 5 years of being a single father. Then she said, "Well, now you know. Good for you. Saves you the travel time and expense. I'll send you photos if I get around to it." She said it so casually, like she was canceling lunch plans. Ben just stood there, looking like he wanted to disappear. Then Kay told me, "I had to set boundaries, Dad. You've always been controlling. This is my wedding, and I won't let you ruin it like you ruined everything else in my life." At first, I thought she was being dramatic. But then Ben spoke up. He said, "Kay told me you had anger issues when she was younger." My heart sank. Ben continued. She said you used to yell at her all the time and threaten to send her away if she misbehaved. That you never really supported her, just tried to control everything she did. I stood there in shock. Kay had convinced her fiancé that I was some sort of abusive monster. I asked Kay how she could do this to me and to Jenna, but she cut me off. Oh, here we go with the Jenna drama again. Poor Dad and his precious Jenna. Did you ever think maybe I didn't want your replacement wife at my wedding? I noticed something strange. There was a framed photo of Kay and Tom on her coffee table. A recent picture. It turned out they had been in contact for months, and she had been planning everything behind my back, using my money to fund a wedding where she could pretend to have a happy family with the man who abandoned her. I asked her what I had done that was so terrible that she'd rather have Tom walk her down the aisle instead of me. Her reply was, "You're being dramatic. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You always make everything about your feelings. This is my wedding, my choice. You're just the checkbook." 20 years of being there for every crisis, meltdown, rehab stint, and late-night emergency, and that's all I am to her. Just a checkbook. I looked at Ben and said, "Good luck, man. You're going to need it," and left. The whole confrontation lasted about 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. I drove home in a daze and had to pull over at one point because I was hyperventilating. I called Jenna to come pick me up because I couldn't drive anymore. When Jenna arrived, she looked at my face and just knew. She drove us to get ice cream, like we used to do when Kay was little and having a tough day. She didn't say anything, just let me sit there, eating my sundae, trying not to completely fall apart in public. After that talk at her apartment, I couldn't let it go. I called Kay the next day and she actually picked up, probably by mistake. I asked her what I had done to deserve this. I don't know why, but I really needed to know. She unleashed everything she had been holding in for years. According to Kay, I'm the worst father ever because I supposedly rubbed my remarriage in her face. Never mind that I waited 5 years after her mom left before dating anyone. Those 5 years were filled with being a single dad, running a business, and handling a child who was acting out. And Jenna? She had been nothing but good to Kay, helping her through high school, college, and even 2 rehab stays. But according to Kay, Jenna was just a gold digger who stole her dad. Kay also brought up something that happened when she was living with my sister. After some rough patches, I thought maybe a change of scenery would help. My sister has a daughter the same age as Kay, so I thought being around a cousin might be beneficial. But Kay started bullying my niece, making her life miserable. When I confronted Kay, she expected me to take her side and got furious when I didn't defend her behavior. According to her, that was me choosing other people over my own daughter. She conveniently forgets all the times I did choose her, like when she got caught with pills at school. I fought hard to keep her from getting expelled, calling in every favor I had. When her grades were too poor for college, I used my contacts to get her into a decent school. Then there's the money. Do you know how expensive rehab is? Because I do. Twice. The first time was after college when she got deep into pills again, and the second was a year later. Both times I dropped everything to help her. Maxed out credit cards, took out loans, whatever it took. She lived with us rent-free until last year, and I paid for her car, phone, credit cards, everything. Even after all the screaming matches, the times she called Jenna horrible names, and the 3 a.m. crisis calls, I kept supporting her because that's what dads do, right? But yesterday, she had the nerve to tell me I owed her this wedding, that paying for it was the least I could do after ruining her life by remarrying. When I reminded her I was doing her a favor by paying $50,000 for the wedding, she got defensive, saying any decent father would want to give their daughter her dream wedding. I lost it, then told her she was acting entitled and ungrateful. Bad move. She started bringing up everything I've ever done wrong in her eyes. How I abandoned her by going on business trips when she was little. Those trips that paid for everything she had. How I chose Jenna over her by defending Jenna when Kay called her racist names. Yeah, that happened too. Jenna's Middle Eastern, and Kay said some really nasty things about that. The final straw came when she said she wished her mom had taken her to Europe instead of leaving her with me. That's when I knew. 20 years of trying to be a good dad, and she'd rather have been with the people who abandoned her. After that call, I was just broken. Jenna found me crying in my office. It was the first time she'd ever seen me like that. Jenna, the saint that she is, just sat with me. She didn't say anything. That's when Jenna finally snapped. Not at me, but at the situation. In 14 years of marriage, I had never seen her truly angry. Frustrated, sure, but not angry. She kept saying things like, "We need to protect ourselves," and Kay needs to learn she can't treat people like this. Jenna's a teacher, working with troubled kids. She said Kay's behavior was textbook narcissistic entitlement. I sat there, looking at the pile of wedding bills on my desk. Venue deposit $155,000, catering advance $88,000, flowers $5,000, DJ $3,000, $50,000 worth of wedding expenses I wasn't even allowed to attend, while my own daughter was going to pretend to have a happy family with Tom. Something inside me snapped. I called my bank first thing in the morning to try to stop payments on everything. But most of the deposits were non-refundable. I didn't care about the money anymore. I just wanted to stop this wedding from happening. I started with the venue, explained I paid the deposit, and wanted to cancel. The manager was understanding once I told him the situation. He even shared a story about his own child cutting him off. Misery loves company, I guess. Then I canceled the catering, flowers, DJ, photographer. Everything except the wedding planner. I didn't want Kay to find out and make new arrangements. Petty, probably, but I was too hurt and angry to think straight. There was a moment while I was canceling everything when I almost backed out. I saw a picture of Kay from her high school graduation on my desk. She was actually smiling in it. One of the last times I remember her being genuinely happy. I almost called it all off right then. But then I remembered how she smirked when she told me about Tom. How she called Jenna those horrible names. How she said I was just the checkbook. I kept going. I left the dress alone. It had already been paid for, and she had it at her place. It was the one thing she had been excited about picking out with her friends. You know what's messed up? While I was canceling everything, I kept getting these automated emails from the wedding planner about upcoming deadlines, final menu selections, and even choosing the father-daughter dance song. Each one felt like a knife to the gut. Jenna sat with me during all the cancellation calls. I think she was worried I'd back out if she left me alone. She even took over some calls when I got too choked up to speak. I remember her telling the florist, "No, we don't want to reschedule. We want to cancel completely." The whole time, I kept thinking about how Kay would react when she found out. Part of me wanted her to hurt, like I was hurting. But a bigger part of me just felt tired. So damn tired of always being the villain in her story, no matter what I did. The funny thing is, this wasn't even the most expensive thing I'd ever paid for with Kay. Both her rehab stays cost more. But this felt different. This wasn't me helping her through a crisis. This was her using me while actively trying to hurt me. After everything was done, I just sat in my office, staring at the wall. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? I sat there, thinking about how it had all come to this. Me sabotaging my own daughter's wedding. The wedding planner kept calling about final arrangements, but I let them all go to voicemail. I figured he'd find out soon enough when everyone showed up at a canceled venue. Is it bad that part of me was actually looking forward to the chaos that would unfold on the wedding day? Probably. But at that point, I didn't care. The wedding day started like any other Saturday. I was at home with Jenna, both of us trying to act normal. But we kept checking our phones every 5 minutes, like we were watching a timer countdown to an explosion. Around 10 a.m., my niece started calling me nonstop. Apparently, the wedding planner and his team had shown up at the venue to start setting up, but security wouldn't let them in. They showed the cancellation paperwork, and the planner started freaking out, calling Kay, calling me. But I didn't answer. Kay showed up at the venue around 11 a.m. in her wedding dress, full hair and makeup, ready for photos. My niece said she looked really pretty, which somehow made everything worse. When security told her the venue was canceled, she completely lost it. She started screaming at the guards, trying to force her way in. The guards had to physically stop her. My niece said Kay was screaming, "Do you know who my father is?" Which was ironic, considering she didn't even want me there. The best part? Tom never showed up, not even a call. I guess some people never change. Kay kept calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. Then Ben showed up, and things got even more intense. Kay was trying to climb over a decorative fence to get into the venue, her dress getting all muddy. Ben tried to stop her before she got arrested for trespassing. Meanwhile, the wedding planner was on the phone with his boss. The meltdown was intense. Around this time, the guests started arriving. About 200 people, all dressed up with nowhere to go. Cars were backed up down the street, Everyone was confused, calling Kay, calling each other. Total chaos. The catering trucks showed up, but I guess no one informed them about the cancellation, and they couldn't get in either. Now, there were 3 massive catering vans blocking traffic. Kay was still screaming at security. Guests were standing around, and the wedding planner looked like he was about to have a stroke. That's when Kay finally realized what had happened. My niece said Kay just went quiet, like, scary quiet. And then she started laughing like a crazy person. She told everyone that I had ruined everything, that I did this. She tried calling me probably 50 times, leaving increasingly unhinged voicemails. I didn't listen to them until later, but let me tell you, she threatened to kill me, to kill Jenna, to burn our house down. Real psycho stuff. By 1 p.m., she showed up at our house, still in her ruined wedding dress, makeup streaked down her face, but she couldn't get past the gate because I had deactivated her access code. She started leaning on the horn of her car, just holding it down for about 10 minutes straight. Our neighbors called the cops. By the time the police arrived, she was out of her car, throwing rocks at our security cameras, screaming about how I ruined her life. The cops had to drag her away. Ben looked like he wanted to die from embarrassment. I watched the entire thing unfold on our security cameras. Jenna kept telling me to stop watching, but I couldn't. It was my daughter out there, having a complete mental breakdown in a muddy wedding dress. It was the worst day of my life. Honestly, I kept thinking about how this wasn't what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted to teach her a lesson, but watching her fall apart like that was rough. Really rough. Later, the wedding planner called about final payments. I told him to take it up with Kay. He started talking about how his reputation was ruined, but I hung up. I was way past caring at that point. I found out later that some of the guests went to Kay and Ben's apartment for an impromptu reception with a grocery store cake. Real depressing stuff. The days after the wedding were like nuclear fallout. First, my parents showed up the next morning. They're in their 70s and had to drive 3 hours to get here. My mom was furious, going off about how we never turn our backs on family, and what kind of father ruins his daughter's wedding. My dad just sat there looking disappointed, which honestly felt worse than Mom's yelling. I tried explaining about Tom, about Kay blocking us from the wedding, but Mom wasn't having it. She kept saying, "She's just confused. You're the parent. You need to be the bigger person." Easy for her to say. Kay's always been an angel around them. Then, my parents dropped the bomb. They offered to pay for a new wedding, covering all the costs so Kay could reschedule everything. My own parents going behind my back like that hurt. It really hurt. But Kay made it worse. When my parents went to her place to tell her about paying for the new wedding, she completely lost it on them. She screamed that they were taking my side and betraying her, just like everyone else. Get this. She actually blamed them for her drug problems, saying they exposed her in high school and ruined her life, which is total BS, because it was her teacher who told me about the pills, not my parents. She told them, quoting my mom here, "Get the fucks out and never come back." She screamed at my 75-year-old mother, who has a heart condition and used to spoil her rotten every summer. That's when my parents finally saw what I'd been dealing with. Mom called me crying later that night, apologizing for not believing me. She said she couldn't recognize the angry woman who had screamed at her. "That's not our Kay," she kept saying. Yeah, Mom, I know. Family started taking sides after that. My sister, the one Kay lived with during high school, completely backed me up. She'd seen firsthand how Kay could be. But my brother Joe thought I went too far. This whole thing has turned into a family civil war. Thanksgiving is going to be real fun this year, let me tell you. Then there's Jenna's family. They've never really liked Kay, and I wonder why. But they tried to stay neutral over the years. After all this, though, they're done. Jenna's mom called Kay some words in Arabic that I probably shouldn't repeat. My friends are split too. My business partners are looking at me sideways, like they're wondering if I'm stable. I got quietly removed from the country club board. Guess ruining your daughter's wedding isn't a good look, even if she deserved it. The worst part? I found out Kay's been telling everyone I did this because I'm racist against Ben's family, which is ridiculous because Jenna's Middle Eastern, and Ben's family is just regular white people from Ohio. But the story is spreading. I've lost some contracts over it. My secretary quit after reading all these fake stories about me online, watching my reputation tank. It's surreal. And through all this, there's this voice in my head saying, "You did this. You're the adult. You should have been better." I can't sleep most nights. I just lie there, wondering if I went too far, if I should have just sucked it up and paid for the wedding like a good dad. But then I remember how she treated my parents, these sweet old people who've done nothing but love her. How she made my mom cry, and suddenly I don't feel so guilty anymore. Jenna's been my rock through all of this. The other night I was looking at old baby pictures of Kay, and Jenna just sat with me. She didn't say anything. I think she's hurting too, but she's trying to stay strong for me. Then I found out through my niece's Instagram that Kay and Ben had a small wedding about a month after the disaster I caused. Just 20 friends at some backyard BBQ thing. Tom didn't show up for that one either. Shocker. At least they got married, I guess. Life went back to normal-ish. Jenna and I tried to move on. I threw myself into work. I was actually starting to feel okay about everything. But then last week I got a call from an unknown number. It was Ben. My heart basically stopped. I thought something had happened to Kay, but nope. Turns out things are way more messed up than I imagined. Ben wanted to meet for dinner, wouldn't tell me why over the phone. He just said he needed to talk. I probably should have told him to fucks off, but curiosity got the better of me. I told Jenna I was meeting him. She wasn't happy about it, but I went to this bar downtown. Guys, holy shit. It turns out Kay and Ben separated 3 months ago. Why? Because she's been absolutely terrorizing him. Throwing plates during arguments, breaking his stuff, screaming at him for hours. Sound familiar? According to Ben, she completely lost it after they moved to a new city for his job. Even though she got a similar paying job there, she blamed him for isolating her from her friends and started acting paranoid, saying everyone was against her. But I didn't expect what came next. Ben apologized to me. He said he saw how Kay treated me and Jenna before the wedding, but didn't say anything. Kay had manipulated him into thinking we deserved it. His words, not mine. He admitted he should have seen the red flags. He said Kay love-bombed him at first, was super sweet and fun, and then slowly started showing her real self after they moved in together. By the time the wedding drama happened, he was already walking on eggshells around her. Get this. She even threw a fit because he wanted to invite his sister to their small backyard wedding. She said she was trying to take over everything, just like Jenna did at his wedding. Ben asked if I'd help get Kay into therapy. He said she'd been spiraling since their separation, calling him 50 times a day, showing up at his work. He still cares about her but can't handle the abuse anymore. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him, "Welcome to my last 20 years," but he looked so broken, so genuinely worried about Kay. He reminded me of myself at his age. So yeah, I went to see Kay. Jenna begged me not to go alone, but I didn't want her to have to deal with Kay's crazy. Bad decision. Kay's apartment was a mess, a concerning level of mess. She started screaming the moment she saw me, called me every name in the book, and blamed me for Ben leaving, for her mom leaving, for literally everything wrong in her life. I tried to stay calm. I told her she needed help and that she could say whatever she wanted about me. But she needed to see a therapist first. She just laughed, then said something that chilled me to my bone. She said she hated Jenna so much she wanted to kill her. Not like casual hate. She had this look in her eyes that scared the shit out of me. I left pretty quickly after that. I called Ben from my car and told him I tried, but there's nothing I can do. She's too far gone. But I couldn't just give up completely. I reached out to Kay's old best friend from high school. Her family used to be our neighbors, but they moved to South Africa. They'd kept in touch, and I asked her to try talking to Kay about getting help. Surprisingly, it worked. Kay agreed to therapy, and even apologized to my parents last week. Though she still says she'll never forgive me or Jenna. I don't know what happens next. The daughter I raised is still in there somewhere, buried under all that anger and hate. But I can't be the one to save her anymore. I had to learn that the hard way. I just wanted to update you all. Thanks for the support over the past year. Special thanks to the other parents who shared similar stories and helped me feel less alone in all this. I guess the moral is, sometimes you can love someone with all your heart and still need to let them go. It hurts though.